Okay. Good morning to everybody that was not at the opening ceremonies, and welcome to the World Congress and Annual Meeting for the IFNOS and American Head and Neck Society. We're now moving on to the 2014 Hayes-Martin Lecture. And for those that usually come to the American conferences, they usually start on time, but we wanted you international folks to feel a little more at home, so we're starting a few minutes late. I'm very honored to make this introduction, and we all know who Hayes-Martin is, and really one of the few giants and leaders of the past century that got our field started, and Dr. Gullane's going to go into much more detail, and so I'll leave that for his address. But today, I was honored last year to have the opportunity to select this year's Hayes-Martin Lecturer, and Dr. Gullane was my obvious choice, and I was surprised he had not been the Hayes-Martin Lecturer in the past. We all know Dr. Gullane and all of his credentials, and if I put down every one of his credentials, he'd never have time to lecture, so I'm not going to go through all of those, but it's pretty impressive in his CV. So his background, you can see in his bio that's in the program, but extremely impressive. He has been trained as a resident and fellow by the best of the best at that time, and now he has trained the best of the best, many of you who are out here today. He was born in Ballinasloe, Ireland. He has two brothers, Thomas and Eamon, and a sister, Anna. And this picture actually is a real-life photo of Gullane's hotel that his brother Thomas still runs. Here he is, and these are his children, Kira and John, and his wife, Barbara Cruikshank, is here in the audience with us today. So we're honored to have her. She's an OBGYN physician who specializes in fertility. So thank you for being here as well. So there's people in the audience. I ask each of you to provide me a little bit of information on Pat. So I'm going to go through these one at a time. Pat is one of the most dedicated surgeons that I've met. We are all dedicated, but Pat takes it to an all-consuming level. Head and neck surgery, quite frankly, is his passion. Pat loves to travel and socialize, and mostly related to his travels, related to his work. And like the famous Will Rogers, he's never met a tumor he didn't like. To me, I think no tumor is unresectable. That's what that means. We can try to imitate him, but there's no one else like him. I think we all know who've met that. So here's to you, Pat. Thanks for being the 2014 Hayes-Martin Lecturer. What would Dr. Martin think? Honored to have you.
Well, thank you very much, Terry, for that wonderful introduction. Again, thank you to all of you who have attended. And it's a great privilege and honor for me to give the Hayes-Martin Lecture as an otolaryngologist, head and neck surgeon during this centennial year of the unit that I believe he really established or put into the forefront of cancer institutes in the world. So for me, it's a great pleasure and honor to give this talk at this time. In addition, also, I wanted to congratulate all the people who have come, as I've already said. A century of progress, no question abounds. I have no disclosures. Well, what did Dr. Martin think? He would be absolutely overwhelmed with 3,100 registrants. He would also have been very appreciative of the leadership, and in particular, the leadership around the American Head and Neck Society, Terry Day, Jathan Shaw, of course, and Willie Way. Thank you so much. And also, in addition, the fact that we have dedicated July the 27th as the Head and Neck Cancer Day. In my review, I'll try to talk a little bit about my personal journey, recognize some of the pioneers, some of the changing trends in head and neck, the technological developments, the evolution of ablative surgery and the appropriate reconstruction, which I believe has enhanced what we've been able to do today. Molecular biology, viruses and innovations, which is a real challenge, and the future of head and neck oncology. Notice I put it in green, because it's not just head and neck surgery, it's head and neck oncology. A little bit about my personal journey in head and neck surgery, and what is my history, what got me to this point in my professional life from my university in the west of Ireland in Galway. It began with a fork in the road, and the fork was really around this man. In 1967, I loved anatomy. In the anatomy room, I expressed such a desire to dissect the neck that the professor said, tell us a little bit about the clinical implications of the nodes in the neck. And I went back and went to the library, there was no internet at that time, and found someone called Hayes Martin. But in actual fact, I called him Martin Hayes, because in Ireland, Hayes is the surname you think of, like many of the people said today. So what an unfortunate event in my career. He began my career and that fork that I've already alluded to. My personal voyage began in 1970 when I graduated from that university. I went from Galway to London, Ontario, the University of Western Ontario. Subsequently to Pittsburgh, where I did a fellowship, then to New York, back to the University of Western Ontario, and subsequently to Toronto, where I have resided and have enjoyed every moment of it ever since that time. On completion of my residency, I had the good fortune to have advanced training with some of the masters in head and neck surgery at that time. There was no such a thing as a dedicated fellowship at that time. You arranged the fellowship. You did it yourself. First with Dr. Sebastian Arena, then with John Conley, and then finally with Dr. John Converse. There's no question my advice to the younger people in this audience is to get the best training possible. Don't avoid it. Spend that extra year. It will certainly enhance your career and make you very content, less concerned about how to manage cancers, and certainly improve your skills. Well, another fork of the road came as I had a very generous, grateful patient in Bob Wharton, and they gave over $8.5, $9, I think it's about $11 million at this stage, and we established what we call the head and neck, the Wharton Head and Neck Center. And as he said there, it is only natural that we should share our appreciation and gratitude to an institution that provided us with superior care. You've already heard Michael Douglas and the others this morning support and extend their gratitude to Chetan Shaw and the Memorial Sloan Kettering. Well, we have also similar patients, and the important message here is take care of your patients and they will take care of you. We then, with that money, established 6 chairs, and now onto the 7th chair, as you can see. Many of the individuals, I think, in this, of the endowed chairs, you know, in this audience, and I won't dwell on it. It helped also to establish the Translational Head and Neck Cancer Research Program at the University of Toronto in head and neck oncology, and I'm grateful to every individual who is on this slide and more. In addition, internationally, I was given support from a circle of great friends and colleagues, many of you in the audience today, but in particular began the IFNOS World Tour in 2008. Well, who was Dr. Martin? I think most people realize that he did something with a neck dissection. If you ask your residents, you'll be surprised how little they know about Dr. Martin. And it was that reason I want to tell you a little bit more about who Dr. Martin was. We're all aware if you divide the facial artery and vein, you flip the nerve superiorly, it's out of the way, you certainly won't damage it. And that was the move that Dr. Martin became known for, if you will. Hayes Martin is a superb surgeon, no question, I'm aware of that, teacher, leader. His influence is legendary, and I'll try to capture that spirit in my presentation. He's certainly considered the father of head and neck contemporary surgery today. Dr. Martin was one of those unique individuals and rare people who was boarded in 3 different specialties. For the younger individuals, let's take account of that. He was a board in the American Board of Surgery, American Board of Plastic Surgery. He saw the future, and the American Board of Radiology, radiotherapy, radiology it was at that time. He published over 160 peer-reviewed journals in head and neck surgery, with his book, Head and Neck Surgery, Tumors in 1952, which is one of the most popular books at that time. He established the role of needle biopsy, actually, he began it. He provided us the insight into the radical neck dissection, and in particular also the composite resection, better known as a commando operation. Dr. Martin was very concerned that he got to be known as just the commando operative person. He had a desire to do other things. His notable contributions are all here, but I'd take to your attention number 6, which is what changed my life when I read that article as it pertained to the neck dissection in 1966-67. He was a founding member of the first president of the American Head and Neck Society, the Society of Head and Neck Surgery. And it is interesting that Martin's influence was through publication, my reading his article in 1966, and he established and was the first president of the Society of Head and Neck Surgery. Dr. John Conley, whose influence was amazing in my career, whom I did a fellowship with in 1977-78, and he became the first president of the American Society of Head and Neck Surgery. And we are grateful to the leadership of the two societies who saw the wisdom in bringing those two together in 1998, benefiting all of us as we move forward in the arena of head and neck oncology. Martin's impact and influence, no doubt, is legendary. He was the chief, as you can see, from 1934 through 1957 at the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, where he spent all of his life. He had a history of real commitment, as outlined in this slide here, and you can see him with the red line around him. But more importantly, when Dr. Martin moved from the Bellevue when he was a resident, you can see on the slide the 3 last lines from the bottom, where there was only 3 or 4 staff people at that time at Memorial Sloan Kettering, and it was only 100 beds in size. Can you see what Dr. Martin did over the ensuing 25, 30 years, and where the leadership at Memorial has taken that institution to today? He was in awe of Bellevue, and as he went to Memorial, he didn't know what he could do to make it any better. Behind every success is effort. Behind effort is passion. Behind every passion is someone with the courage to try. And that certainly typifies Dr. Martin. To recognize pioneers in head and neck surgery, this is a huge challenge, but all I've done is to say that he would be proud, that we would say that he ranks among the 6 best pioneers in the current era of head and neck surgery on the globe. We're seeing incredibly changing trends in head and neck cancer and the incidence, the etiology, as you've heard this morning. Would he be surprised? I think he would. We're seeing the changes, the landscape since Martin, of the traditional oropharyngeal patient addicted to old habits, smoking, etc., to today, the oropharyngeal addicted individual, which is totally different, and some cross that boundary. You can recognize them, no question, in the waiting room. And we've heard from Mike Douglas this morning how that patient population has certainly changed. As far as the changing trends in the epidemiology, since the World Health Organization became established and the Red Cross in the United States in 61, 62, we've seen the implications of tobacco-induced cancers and more recently the implications of HPV-associated cancers. Dr. Martin would also be surprised today to see the increasing incidence and need for chemoradiation, reduction in the volume of major open surgery, endoscopic approaches, robotic surgery, and open access operations on the decline. As far as the technological developments, he would say, I am impressed. I would like to make a comment here that I believe we made from McGill, or was made from McGill. Have we entered uncharted waters in the 21st century? The discipline of surgery, as we've known it, maybe in the earliest stages of dissolution. Don't run off and say, oh my God, I'm going to do dermatology. Not at all. A victim of technological progress. we may have reached the tipping point of which further innovation will jeopardize the surgeon's traditional role. Let's see what the next 10, 15 years brings us. As far as the evolution of ablative surgery, Dr. Martin would be very appreciative. His extraordinary dedication in not alone the initial wonderful publications, but his book, which in the 50s was even more popular than Dr. Jathan Shaw's book today. Sorry, Jathan, but I read. Sold more copies. In addition, he had significant global impact when at a time no one had global impact with the various publications, and I had to put the one at the bottom there, Cancer, 1948, which is the one that had changed my life. Dr. Martin's influence on current surgical techniques, albeit modified today, were enormous, and I'll try to touch on some of them on this slide, but in particular, I'd like to bring the little stamp in the middle. I can't draw worth a hell. And this stamp I took back from New York after being with Dr. Connolly. I got copies made of the Hayes-Martin, and it was in our office until the electronic age, but it's still there, et cetera, et cetera. This quotation typifies Martin in his quest to effect change in head and neck surgery. If history teaches us anything, it is the man in his quest for knowledge and progress is determined and can't be deterred, as John F. Kennedy has said. The evolution of head and neck surgery, Martin's influence was significant. From the phases in development of ablation, reconstruction, the curtain was raised in the third phase, if you will, of tissue engineering that we're seeing developing today. But we have not implemented much of it in what we're doing surgically at this time. And the patients in 30s, as you can see, are certainly a lot different from the patients in 2014. As far as Martin was concerned, the fine needle aspirate biopsy was often the end, potentially the end of his career, as you'll see. Dr. Hartwell was the chief of surgery at Bellevue at that time, and Hayes-Martin did a biopsy on a patient with scrotal cancer to prove to Hartwell that this was a new primary cancer of the lung. And Hartwell said, "Martin, if you do it again, you're going to be fired." Well, that began a new era of what today has saved most institutions throughout the world. I could only figure it out with my fellow Andrew Foreman in the billions annually. He also made significant contributions to the radical neck dissection, popularized it, followed by Osvaldo Suarez from wonderful Argentina I love, the functional neck dissection, to after that, Bob Byers' contributions, Jathan's contributions, which are enormous, to Tom Robbins' contributions, and the sentinel node by David Suter. I think every one of you in the audience are aware of this, but that development certainly has helped us enormously and has diminished the radicality of surgery from 100% radical neck dissections in the 50s, 60s to today, somewhere between 12 and 15%. His contributions were really enormous in the arena of oral cavity. No question. He popularized what we know today and called the operation the commando procedure. Martin's innovations in oral surgery, in oral reconstruction were amazing. Don't forget, he was boarded in all three specialties. Yesterday he used rib graft, some plates that I'm familiar with, and today we have a menu of reconstruction options that he did not have and he would love to see. And we're grateful to Hidalgo, David Hidalgo at Memorial, who popularized the fibula, and my colleague Ralph Gilbert popularizing the scapula and reconstruction of the mandible. As far as the evolution of organ preservation strategies, this slide kind of summarizes where we have come from in the last 70, 80 years. You can see that from the 40s, everyone had a total laryngectomy, even for T2 glottic cancers, to today, only about 40%, and we have made great inroads and great strides. But there is lots of controversy about the quality of life of these individuals, and as I say, I've seen the future, and maybe it doesn't all work. You should remember that Dr. Martin popularized radiation to treat organs that were important, like the larynx, the pharynx, and the tongue base in the 30s. His background was in radiation oncology, and it wasn't until the 50s when he saw all the enormous complications that developed as a result of radiation that he moved forward to surgery, became a radical surgical arena, and then moving on towards the multimodality therapy that we have today. Well, Arlene Forrester and Greg Wolf have done an incredible job in the 9/11, but what we've all realized that the overall survival at the end of 10 years shows absolutely no difference in those treated with radiation chemotherapy or induction chemotherapy, maybe a little bit with radiation and induction chemotherapy, as you can see there. So the surgical pendulum may be swinging back, no question. But we as surgeons in the audience, when the chemoradiation or the organ preservation approaches fail, we are challenged. And as Chris Gullane had a lovely publication recently on the cost and its impact on quality of life, it's certainly significant. We know that the fistula rate is anywhere between 9 and 57%. And I know some of you in the audience are part of that slide. We saw incredible developments from the 1950s with multiple operations. I wasn't in the 50s, but in the 70s, to today, a one-stage operation to repair pharyngeal defects after chemoradiation. The techniques that Dr. Martin used in the 50s, 60s would certainly not work in the era of chemoradiation today, no question. When we went back and looked at our outcomes of pharyngeal repair in 2006, and we have come a long way since that time, when 153 cases of John Clark, when he was our fellow, et cetera, we analyzed the complications. And when you include hypocalcemia as part of as a complication of total pharyngolaryngectomy, you can see the complications are 70% as opposed to 55%. And when you go back and analyze everything, you can see the fistula rate still was 33%, despite the best form of therapy and the best reconstruction known, I think, on the globe. So we still are challenged today. So surgical salvage, I gave the Jean Myers lecture in 2006. It is technically difficult after chemoradiation. I think every one of us in the audience are aware of that. So the patients require complex reconstructions, and if I'm to say anything has happened in the last 25, 30 years, it's the enhancement and the improved outcome of our patients as a result of better reconstruction. Well, we heard our guest speaker this morning talk about viruses, there's no question. And when John Irish ran the meeting, the head and neck meeting in Toronto, this was a focus of his theme at that time. Would we be pleased? I think Dr. Martin would be absolutely overwhelmed. He could not believe that viruses would be induced in the cancers that we are seeing today. I put together this slide to kind of look at the biologic revolution over the past 80 years through the Martin era. And you can see right down to the Human Genome Project completed from Watson and Crick. I had the great fortune of meeting Watson when I was a medical student, right down to the bottom where we are today with tissue engineering and transplantation. What will the next figure be? Where's our future, et cetera, et cetera. As we win one battle, we confront another. Tobacco-induced cancers is on the decline from 63 right through today with the increasing incidence of HPV. There's so much HPV going on in this meeting, et cetera, that I said I'm not going to dwell on it, but the future challenge in head and neck oncology is certainly around that. HPV incidence of oropharyngeal cancer has increased 225-fold over the past 10 to 15 years. I made a comment to Dr. John Connolly, I have a little old slide, in 1977, 78, and he said, why do you think people are getting cancers, Pat? And I said, it's viruses. He said, no, don't believe it. And I said, yes, it is. I couldn't take it any further because he wouldn't tolerate my comments. There have been lots of toxicity, and those are not slides. This is not a slide off the internet. This is slides that we have treated at one of the 3 prestigious institutions in North America, the Princess Margaret Hospital, and I have been part of some of those patients as well. So we're seeing significant toxicity. But Dr. Martin knew that we were going to have a problem. He did, because he developed the exerciser and stretcher, which you can see in his book, which today we call a terabyte stretcher. My God, he was a visionary individual, no question. As you look at HPV and the cure, we're all struggling at the moment to try and develop a balance between cure, diminished toxicity, de-intensification of therapy, et cetera, et cetera. I want to bring to your attention right in the last two slides, right at the bottom, that the quality of life scores for P16 patients treated by primary radiation or radiation and surgery radiation doesn't matter. Just published out of Pittsburgh shows absolutely no difference in quality of life outcome at a mean average of 5 years. That's just hot off the press. So all of you that advocate different philosophies and management approaches, et cetera, at the end of 5 years, it doesn't matter at all. Well, our future is certainly in prevention. So educate, innovate, and vaccinate. And the recent publication, Laryngoscope at the bottom, shows that only 12.8%, Lurie has shown, of our population know that HPV induces a cancer. My God, ladies and gentlemen, we have a big job to do. We have to undertake education of our public. We need to engage more people like we had this morning in Michael Douglas, and we need to get our patients right up there. And Terry, you have done a remarkable job in this. So vaccination is the future. If you look at all the countries, you can see that Australia probably leads the pack in that the males and females are today vaccinated, in contrast to the other countries, and not even Canada is in this at this time. So we have got to do an awful lot to vaccinate. And you can see in cervical dysplasia in those under 18 years of age in Australia, since the introduction of the vaccination program, you can see the decline from 2007 in the incidence of severe cervical dysplasia in the female population. Is that not enough to tell us we need to start and act? What are the challenges to vaccination? Barriers may occur at various levels among various groups. There's an attitudinal thing. We got to educate our family physicians even. Knowledge gap, fear about vaccine safety, financial concerns, access to medical care system. Ours is not perfect either. There's religious beliefs, and there's public acceptance. But in the next 5 years, we have got to work on this to help. What about the future of head and neck oncology? And again, please make sure that you see I'm talking about head and neck oncology, not talking about head and neck surgery. It is all about a multidisciplinary team. We're all here as a multidisciplinary group, engaged, involved, interested in making impact into the inroads of this terrible tumor. I think Dr. Martin would support these changes in a multidisciplinary approach. What about the future? What are the opportunities? Those are all my patients. You don't have to blame Ian Whitterick or Ralph Gilbert, John Irish or whatever, they're mine. Molecular oncology and professional medicine, no question. Personalized medicine, that's one challenge, no question. The development of new technology, and we're seeing that happening every day, no question, with reversing radiation and chemotherapeutic effects. And Brian O'Sullivan at our center and the group are doing everything in their power to diminish that. That is what we need to fix before 2016 meeting in Seattle. At the Canadian Society meeting where I served as president over this past year, the theme of the meeting that I just held in Ottawa was titled Prevention Innovation, a Challenge for the Future. There isn't a bulletin from the American College of Surgeons. Our people, like even our cancer colleagues in other locations today serving the thoracic group in San Francisco, et cetera, who are looking and saying, how can we make a change? I think prevention, ladies and gentlemen, innovation as far as we are concerned, is the real challenge for the future. Well, the next 100 years is difficult to predict, but I think you're going to see more transplantation. You'll probably see more robotics. I think it'll plateau like the laser did, my personal opinion. I think there'll be more tissue engineering, no question, image-guided targeted surgery. At our institution, John Irish has led that, and in particular also around prevention. Prevention is the future, no question. So change is inevitable. So get involved and be part of the solution like Dr. Martin was. He was part of the solution from 1930 to 1957. In times of change, learners inherit the earth, while the learned find themselves beautifully equipped to deal with a world that no longer exists. Isn't that the truest word? Dr. Martin was, as far as Dr. Martin was concerned, he left an incredible legacy. He was an amazing individual when you read through all his publications. He had the same artist work with him, Alfred Feinberg, for 31 years. He did all his drawings, and I bet Hayes was not a good artist like me either. He was in the operating room with him. He was everywhere with him. He made and he left an incredible legacy. He left an incredible legacy that you didn't hear about this morning at the introductory comments, because I took out and decided to use this slide of Edgar Frizzell, Elliot Strong, who's right here in the front row. Elliot, wherever you are in an enormous stimulation, an enormous, and a person who made enormous contributions to our specialty. And you gave Jathan the opportunity to take the institution to the next level in the arena of head and neck oncology. Elliot, we are grateful to you. I did not know Dr. Frizzell, but I knew you. And when I was a fellow with Dr. John Conley, Dr. Conley was going to Germany to be inducted into some society. I think the Germans loved him, and for all the Germans in the audience, I know they did. And Elliot said, why don't you come over and spend a couple of days with us? So I'm indebted to Dr. Strong and for the contributions he made. Well, what a legacy Martin left in not alone Frizzell, Elliot, and Dr. Shaw. Dr. Shaw has been the chief from 1992 to the present time. I think we've all heard lots about Dr. Shaw this morning, but he was the chief, as I've said. He described the basis of modern neck management, outcome publications in every disease site in the head and neck, innovative improvements, and made vast surgical contributions in the surgical arena of almost every area. He authored and has authored over 350 peer-reviewed publications in the arena of head and neck surgery, innumerable awards and fellowship awards, et cetera, plus we established, and I got to say this because it's important, Willie Way, Jay Shaw, and I met in 2005 after I served as president of the American Head and Neck Society, and Jay said, Pat, what next? And I said, let's fly around the world. And that's the impetus that began the IFNOS tours of 2008, so I'm grateful to all of those. I think this says everything about Dr. Shaw. Do not go where the path may lead. Go instead where there's no path and leave a trail. Doesn't that describe Jathan and what we've done and what he's doing for us today? In 2006 or 2008, I think it was, I was asked to write a tribute about Dr. Shaw. And it was the most difficult thing. And when I got the letter from this individual, I thought Jay had died. But Jay, you were still very active because I called you up that night. But in that tribute, I recognized his incredible contributions to head and neck oncology over the previous 25 years that I'd known him, his innovations in head and neck oncology, and his role as I described an ambassador for head and neck surgery throughout the world. I described him also as a Renaissance man. We are indebted to Jay, and I think the statement at the top certainly describes this individual. Dr. Shaw's impact on head and neck oncology includes his role as head and neck surgical oncologist, leadership. What about this meeting? The biggest ever, the best ever. 3,100 people come into and flock into New York to attend this incredible meeting. Scientist, mentor, innovator, teacher, collaborator, administrator, advocate, and a family man married to Barty for over 45 years, and Millie, his daughter, son-in-law Dan, and Kia, the granddaughter just born to Millie. So with that, I'd like to say, Martin, you left a legacy. You left a great legacy in this man. It is time that Jathan be crowned. There's no question. And it is time that the fireworks come up over New York tonight to celebrate this incredible individual. So if you can imagine it, you can achieve it. If you can dream it, you can become it. And that's the head and neck group with Ralph and I in the middle. I take those two people because one started my career, the other enhanced my career. It is time, therefore, to take pride of our past accomplishments, reflect on our strengths, and anticipate a future full of promise in a multidisciplinary approach. Hayes Martin was the first president, Connolly the first president. The two societies merged in 1988. May the dedication of these two individuals continue into the next generation. Finally, to say also, they both died at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center 20 years apart. And they both shook hands, I'm aware, when I was a fellow in 1977 and made up their differences. I am indebted to the 46 individuals in this slide who have helped enormously to enhance my career, to enhance what we have today in Toronto, to enhance what we have globally. And every one of them on this slide throughout the world have made incredible contributions that have helped to raise the bar of head and neck surgery and head and neck oncology in our specialty. I'd like to take this privilege, to take this honor, I would like to have the privilege and the opportunity for me and to thank for giving the Hayes Martin lecture, but in particular it's truly an honor to give this lecture in this year, the centennial of the Memorial Sloan Kettering. A special thanks to my family, to my wife Barbara, Kieran, John, and my colleagues who have supported me throughout my career. It is my hope that the younger members of this specialty, and it's great that so many of you are in attendance, will carry on the traditions that exemplified our teachers, mentors, and Hayes Martin. I thank you for the opportunity of giving this prestigious keynote address, and I wish you all the best in your future careers and the best at this meeting. Thank you, Terry, again for selecting me to give this lecture.
Thank you. Wait, Pat.